What's up, horror fans? Anchor Pete here, and I am with my good friend Danny, Dr. Zayas God. Danny, how you doing, man?
Doing pretty good. What's going on, man?
Well, I would say that this is the Lasser cast, but you know what? There has been a change. Danny and I have decided to change the name of the channel, and it's going to be called now. Danny, you want to give it away?
The Horror Dads.
Boom. So if you want to look us up on YouTube, just type in Horror Dads. Not even we're just getting right to the point. And if you want to look us up on Spotify or Apple Podcasts or any other podcast, just Horror Dads. I changed it all up today.
Yeah.
Danny, you want to tell them why we made the change?
I think the Lassercast was a good name for us to get started. Our whole goal when we started this about a year ago during the pandemic was you, Chris, and I were gonna talk about movies with a focus on Mike Flanagan, and we did that. We covered a bunch of Flanagan movies, and I love that you kept on the logo the Lasser glass mirror itself. So our channel was named for the Lasser glass from Oculus, which was one of the first full in-depth reviews that we did. But we also kind of felt like we're a horror channel, and the Lasser cast is kind of difficult to explain to people who might not be in the horror community, or it's very niche. Pete and I both have young kids. You probably know this one a little bit. Charlotte's been on our channel many times before. Now get out. No. Charlotte's been on our channel a bunch, and I know, Pete, you and your daughter Pepper, you do videos on your Anchor Pete channel all the time. She's very big into genre work and Superman and that kind of stuff.
Right.
So we kind of felt like, well, what do Pete and I have in common that really will grab attention? Well, we're both into horror. We're both dads. And hey.
Whoa.
And that's what we went with. So we're going
to... we're both incredibly good looking too, but I think Horror Hunks was taken, so...
Yeah. I have to say, I did watch your and Brian's review of Loki this week, and I was too distracted by you guys flashing your chests and your shirts. That was very... I almost couldn't pay attention to the video.
Yeah, you gotta love Danny, man. He just pimped like all three of my YouTube channels in one sitting. That is, cheers to that, brother.
I just feel like the channel is really not going to change all that much. We're still going to be covering topical things in horror, but I like the idea of. For the last few years, I've been trying to get Charlotte into more and more horror movies. She loves showing off the list of horror movies she watches. I know that you've been trying to ease Pepper into a more horror genre stuff. So if that means we cover more gateway horror stuff, and I feel like the movie that we're going to talk about today could actually be sort of like a gateway horror type of movie, because we'll get into it a little bit later.
Sure.
And the other thing we were going to talk about today, which the sad breaking news that Richard Donner passed away. He directed The Goonies, which not a horror movie, but certainly has some scary moments in it.
Absolutely.
And I remember seeing One Eye Willie, the pirate skeleton, as a kid, and that messed with me the first time anyway.
Yeah, absolutely. There's so many movies that we saw when we were our daughter's ages, because Danny's daughter is 11, I believe, right?
She's turning 11 in December, yeah.
Okay. My daughter's about to turn 11 this week. And so, the kind of stuff that we saw when we were around their age is the 80s, or actually, I think it'd be the 90s for us.
Yeah, early 90s.
Right, it was the 90s for us, but then we got to see all these movies growing up from the 80s. And there's so many things in there that have some really scary moments in them, even though they're not considered horror movies. The Goonies is a great example. I mean, even little silly things like Pee-wee's Big Adventure with Large Marge. You just mentioned Richard Donner. Now, I know he didn't make Superman 3, but Superman 3 has one of the scariest things you've ever seen, right?
Oh, God. Yeah. The robot lady at the end of Superman 3 is forever the scariest moment in a non-horror movie. Speaking of scary moments in Richard Donner movies, we were just talking about this before. The Omen is legitimately the scariest movie I have ever seen. My parents showed me that when I was about 9 or 10.
Oh, wow.
And it took me about 3 viewings because I ran out of the room several times. But yeah, I'm one of those rare Omen over Exorcist people. And Richard Donner, between Superman and the Goonies and all the Lethal Weapon movies, just so much great stuff. He even directed a few episodes of Tales from the Crypt.
Okay.
A TV series. Scrooged. I know.
Yeah.
Talk about another movie that has horror elements to it.
Yeah. We mentioned Scrooge in our best of, like, Christmas episode or whatever. Yeah. Yeah, that's a really good point. You know, we, like, because we're these, you know, dads, and that we've seen these movies since we were kids, we have a perspective, but it's cool to bring in Charlotte and to bring in Pepper because they can have this fresh perspective on things. Like, what might have scared us, they might not even get scared by nowadays. And then things that we think now are nothing might really scare them. Yeah. Right?
You know, like the movie that we're going to be talking about today is the new Josh Rubin film, Werewolves Within. And she came in and sat for about like 10 minutes of it. And she had some critiques about the werewolf at the, you know, spoiler alert, the movie's called Werewolves Within. But, you know, her first comment was, I've seen better werewolves, because she's seen American Werewolf in London. She's seen Silver Bullet. What else?
I've seen like
Bad Moon. Yeah, she's seen a few pretty cool werewolf movies. So
yeah, Ginger Snaps.
She hasn't watched that one yet. I think she went to bed early that night when it played on Joe Bob. But I have it on DVD, so I can always play that for her. Right.
That's one of my favorites.
Yeah, awesome.
Thank you, Charlotte. Yeah, we can kind of jump right into Werewolves Within. But just so you guys know, just from now on, we're still going to bring in the same kind of content, like Danny said, but we'll probably see a little bit more with Charlotte, and we'll see a little bit more with Pepper. And, you know, just being dads, that's something you don't really see on these horror channels that much. You see a lot of middle-aged white dudes like us, but not all of them bring in their kids. So, Danny, you ready to take a trip to Beaverfield with me?
Yeah, let's do it.
All right. So, guys, we're going full spoilers to talk about Josh Rubin's sophomore efforts, Werewolves Within. And, Danny, you talked about this being like maybe potentially a gateway. This is actually based on a video game. Did you know that?
I didn't know that until I did know. I knew about it today, but I did not know about it originally until somebody posted, like, over a month ago. Somebody was like, Werewolves Within may be the new best video game movie of all time. And I went, what?
Yeah, what the hell are you talking about?
One of the producers is Ubisoft, which I'm assuming is the game company that. Have you ever played the game?
I think that's actually an erectile dysfunction pill, Ubisoft. Sorry, low-hanging fruit. But no, I haven't played the game, but I saw that it was made for PlayStation 4 VR, and that makes me want to try it because I actually just got a PlayStation 4, just got VR, so I want to try that out. Yeah. I haven't played the game, but I know that it's sort of like in a medieval setting, but it has the same trappings as this movie. It's a bunch of people in an inn, and you're trying to figure out which character is the werewolf.
I subscribe to a YouTube channel called No Rolls Barred. It's an English YouTube channel that focuses on board games. And they always talk about a board game called Werewolf. And about like where it's like a game where like you sit in a circle and everybody gets cards and somebody's the secret werewolf and you have to like deduct who is the werewolf based on questions and clues. And they always rave about that game. And I saw, even though I've also never played that game, I saw a lot of that in this movie too. Like,
sure.
So maybe Werewolves Within the VR game has like its roots in the board game Werewolf. Maybe.
I would not be surprised. The movie itself is billed as a whodunit with teeth. And so that's the whole thing. That's the whole fun thing is which one of these people is the werewolf. And you have this cast of characters. Now, here's my first question for you. do you like this cast of characters? Or do you think that, hey, there's a lot of actors I like in there, but maybe the characters aren't that great? How do you feel?
I like some of them.
Okay.
I dislike others. But I think that was kind of the intention. Like, there's some characters that are just written to be unlikable characters.
Right.
But I think the thing that kept me interested in this movie was how much I did like the two main characters.
Oh, okay.
So I feel like I liked Finn, played by Sam Richardson. I really liked Cecily, played by Milana Vaintraub.
Yeah.
And I absolutely loved Dr. Ellis, played by Rebecca Henderson, who she had a very Tilda Swinton vibe to her.
Okay.
Did you see The Dead Must Die, the Jim Jarmusch zombie movie that came out?
Yeah, I know what you're talking about. Yeah.
She felt like a character out of that movie, where every line, like the way she would just pop up in the background or like show up to the side. I really had fun with that character.
Yeah.
But I think a lot of the characters are just not meant to be liked, and it does kind of drag the movie down. Whereas, like, I feel like a movie like Knives Out, which this movie felt a lot like Knives Out.
Yeah.
Knives Out had so many big time actors who were having so much fun. Like, you weren't supposed to like Chris Evans in Knives Out, but he was so funny in that role that you felt into loving that character. Whereas here, it's like the woman who plays Trisha, you're just like, or like that character of Trisha, you're just like, and then there's that other couple, like Gwen and Marco, or I think, where I'm just like it felt like they're just there to pad the death count. If this was like a slasher movie or like a werewolf movie, you know?
I do. I hear you. Yeah. Well, I mean, that's the thing, right? Is that for me, I might have like led you a little bit with my question, because I was like, do you like those actors, but not the characters? Because some of these actors are people that I've seen recently in things, and I've really loved them in other things. Like you mentioned, Trisha, that's Michaela Watkins, and she was on the most recent season of Search Party, and she was like super funny as this lawyer in that show. And then you also have Michael Chernus, who you might recognize him from like Spider-Man Homecoming. He was like the Tinkerer, right?
Yeah.
And he's also in Orange is the New Black. He's like Piper's brother. Go ahead.
No, there was just like so many of the actors in this movie I'm looking at going, where do I like? I looked up all of them, and I'm just like, I don't know.
Yeah.
Like, I know these actors, but I don't know where I know them from. Like, I know the guy you just mentioned being from Spider-Man Homecoming. Okay, I know that one. The guy who played Emerson, the hunter, he's been in a million things.
Oh, and I love him in like almost everything.
Yeah.
He's on the show Billions. He's a lawyer on that. He's great. He was in like so many HBO things. He's on Boardwalk Empire. He's on True Detective, the first season.
Yeah.
You know, he's great. And when I was watching the movie, because he had like this thick beard and long hair, he doesn't usually have long hair.
Yeah.
I was like, who is that? And he was really good in this. But I just felt like I've liked all these actors in other things, and I felt like this movie was kind of uneven. You know, like for this movie, I really liked Scare Me a lot. Scare Me made it to our top 10 of 2020, right?
Yes. That was written and directed by Josh Rubin, which is why obvious comparisons.
Right. And Josh Rubin, he's kind of like this Twitter darling right now. Whenever I see his little face on Twitter, I'm like, oh, I like that guy. He's fun. But then, like, he did not write this, right? It was written by Misha Wolf. It's an appropriate last name for this, right? And I just feel like it's kind of uneven. There's some jokes that land and that are really funny. Like, just right off the top of my head, there's a scene where, like, the sheriff asks, "Does everyone have guns? Or who has guns? Raise your hands." And the one guy, he's like, "America." Yeah, like he just, he's like, "America, of course."
And I like Trisha just waving around the little gun, and she's
Right.
like pointing it at everybody, and she's like, "What?
Right.
It's just little."
Right. Yeah, and so there's little moments like that, and you have some really excellent comedic actors. I forgot to mention when I was listing them all, you also have
Harvey Guillen.
Right, exactly, who plays Guillermo on What We
Do in Shadows. He's amazing. I love him in everything.
Yes.
Like I liked him towards the end. He got a little more stuff to do on screen. But like again, like I go back to Dr. Ellis, the character. I wrote down the line where she says to the inn owner, she goes, very like deadpan. She just goes, "I'm going to find out what killed your dead husband." And I was like, I don't know why that line just made me laugh out loud. I was like, "I'm going to find out what killed your dead husband." Like,
yeah.
And the way she would pop up on the screen, like I really dug that. But then like she was like one of the first characters gone, and I was like, "Oh, all right."
Oh okay. Man. And you assume that she was killed by the werewolf hunter guy, right?
Yeah, that was another thing. Like in terms of the writing, where that character, so like, was he a millionaire who had a pipeline? Because the whole thing was like, apparently he's been traveling from town to town hunting a werewolf, but he's also been in this town for long enough to establish a pipeline that has the whole town at odds with each other. So I was really confused about that plot point a little bit.
Yeah.
And I'll tell you who I kept waiting for it to be. We're talking spoilers now. I kept waiting for it to be Janine, the woman who ran the inn, because she, there's like an unwritten rule in horror movies where if the character's not dead and they're not on screen, well, there's usually, either they're the unseen like villain, or their dead body is going to turn up as a jump scare.
Right.
And so she spent a lot of time off screen towards the end of the movie, and I was like, "Oh, okay, that's going to be the big reveal."
Yeah,
but
it's very possible that in the version, like the multiple drafts of the script, maybe they had different ideas of who the killer was going to be, and they thought, well, maybe this guy will be a werewolf hunter, maybe he'll be the billionaire. I felt like he legitimately did have the pipeline there, and maybe he just on this side job or like his hobby, he hunted werewolves, right?
Yeah.
But there was absolutely 100% a commentary, like a political commentary with like, having a pipeline, and then there's sort of like the right-wing people, and then there's the left-wing people, and the way that...
Yeah, I feel like the movie didn't take sides at all because it portrayed everybody. It's like the right-wing people who are like, "We'll take the money," like let them dig, are like so caricatures, and then like you of course have like this woke millionaire tech gay couple as like the far left, and I'm like, okay, this movie's going to the extremes to make everybody look silly, which is fine. That's that movie The Hunt that came out that was hugely controversial. There was no controversy because every character was such a caricature that it should not have, like, anyone with common sense knows that this is a satire.
Yes. Right. Yeah, you're absolutely right that like on both ends of the spectrum, the characters are kind of goofy. They're also very self-involved and evil, because some people just kill each other just randomly too, right? Like Trisha kills that millionaire tech guy you were talking about.
Yeah.
So stabs him with like a maple sap thing.
And he's another actor who's been in a million things. Cheyenne Jackson, I think his name is. He was in American Horror Story. He was in a few other things that I remember. I've seen him many times before. But yeah, and I got to a point where I started to think maybe there isn't a werewolf in this movie. And that started to make me think of one of our other favorite horror movies from last year,
right?
The Wolf of Snow Hollow,
Right.
which is a movie very similar, where there's, you know, a small town in the winter, in the cold, and there's a werewolf that is attacking people. And, you know, I don't want to go into spoilers for that movie. We talked about it. We all loved it. But this movie did kind of feel like that a little bit. It did.
Yes.
It did have a very scare me vibe also, with the whole people in the snow being locked inside. I also think it's very strange that this movie, being a snowbound contained thriller, came out right after, like, on July 4th weekend. You know, like, you would think it would come out in the winter.
Oh, okay, yeah,
Just because
yeah.
of the whole, like, the weather plays a huge part in this movie.
Absolutely,
So
absolutely. Yeah, it's like
feels
the
weird
thing.
to be looking at a new movie with characters in the snow. I don't know. Maybe it was supposed to come out sooner, but, you know, it got pushed back. I don't know.
Yeah, who knows with COVID and stuff? Absolutely, yeah. You know, the thing with Wolf of Snow Hollow, there are absolutely always going to be comparisons between this and Wolf of Snow Hollow, just because they're so close in release time to each other, right? And I mean, you know, my wife has seen the trailer for this, and she's a huge fan of Wolf of Snow Hollow. And she's like, "Oh, is this a Wolf of Snow Hollow ripoff?" I just kind of feel like this is like a Dante's Peak and Volcano kind of situation.
Yeah.
You know, where it's
Ants
like
in a Bug's Life. You know,
right.
It happens. Deep Impact and Armageddon. It was like all 1998. Every movie had a twin.
That's right. That's right. So, I mean, ultimately, though, I do like Wolf of Snow Hollow a lot better. It's a different situation. It's much more of like a character study. This is more of a whodunit, even though the whodunit is part of Wolf of Snow Hollow as well. What I will say, though, is that this is very similar to what I said in my Fear Street 1994 review, which is that I liked this a lot more on the second half versus the first half. And I have to say that I liked the characters more by the second half as well. I don't know if this maybe is just something I'm not picking up on and as I'm getting into horror, but it just seems like the more the characters are in peril and what they do in peril makes them more compelling versus like when we just see them in their everyday lives. Like the sheriff, for instance, I felt like, so what's that actor's name? That's
Sam
right.
Richardson?
Sam Richardson. I don't really know him from anything. I know he's in like Veep, and it looks like he's done some voiceover work. Yeah. But I just from the posters, the trailers and stuff, and just watching him in this, he just seems like he has like a natural kind of likability. Like you just kind of like this guy, even if he's not saying anything, right? But I felt like his character, where he's just kind of like mumbling and bumbling and stuff, it kind of made me unlike or dislike him. Now, there is one part at the very end where I was like, oh, this is maybe my favorite part of the whole movie, was when we find out who the werewolf is, and they are about to attack him, and they say that essentially his flaw is that he's nice. And he does this whole rant about it's okay to be a nice person, right? He kind of like loses his temper. That was probably my favorite part in the whole movie. And it seemed like that was his whole arc, was like that he was sort of a pushover, but it's okay to be a good person.
And then I do love the idea that they meet this like basically woodsman who wants nothing to do with the town, and he ends up converting him to his side by talking about Mr. Rogers.
Mr. Rogers
starts with a quote from Mr. Rogers about like friendly neighborhoods. And he's like, I thought about what you said about Mr. Rogers. And I'm like, so, you know, being nice actually, you know, worked. And that scene that you talked about where he has enough, where everybody's like keeps talking as he's about to talk, he keeps getting cut off, and he finally stands up and he's like, I'm going to talk now. And he throws an object against the wall. And as he's about to talk, the woman just mumbles like, that was a really expensive piece of china. And again, I thought that was just like a perfectly timed, funny line. I thought overall this movie, I might enjoy it more on rewatches.
Sure.
I feel like now do I think it has the watchability or the rewatchability of a movie? Like I've seen this movie compared to Clue a lot. And I don't really get that unless, like you had mentioned before, I would have loved this movie if, like, when the movie ended, they were like, I can't believe that person was the werewolf. And then it went, but what about? And then they showed another ending where because then that would have like felt almost like a video game where it's like every time you play a video game, something different could happen, or you go a different path in like a haunted house, and you play the Resident Evil games. I'm sure like there's different passageways where if you go one way, you face different monsters.
Yeah. Well, a game like Werewolves Within, it would have like a different person be the werewolf each time.
I thought I saw all these Clue comparisons, and I was like, I didn't really see Clue. I definitely felt a Knives Out vibe from like the loud characters who all are forced together in like this kind of large estate type of place. But I didn't see Clue. It also kind of reminded me of this really older horror movie called The Beast Must Die. Which it's a movie about a group of people who are locked. I think, is it Peter Cushing? Peter Cushing might be in it. Where it's basically a bunch of people in a castle, and one of them is a werewolf, and they're trying to figure out who it is over dinner. It's not the best movie, but it's a cool premise, and I kind of feel like maybe that was the genesis of the video game.
Is it a Hammer movie?
I'm not sure. I think it might be up on Shudder. It was on Prime for free not long ago, so I'll go look for it after.
Yeah. That might be a good movie to throw up on our channel too and review.
Yeah. But yeah, I mean, overall, what were your, like, would you say you liked this movie, loved it? I think we're kind of on the same page.
Yeah, okay. So like I said, I watched Scare Me. I loved Scare Me, and it sort of endeared me towards Josh Rubin. And I think that the main reason why I felt that way is because it's about a writer who he's like so passionate about writing that he goes and rents out a cabin, right? But then he's sort of a hack. And he doesn't really have anything to say for his name, right? I could like really relate to that. And that character rings so true. And everyone is just like praising this movie up and down, that I thought it was going to be this really outstanding kind of movie. And I feel like just the jokes kind of fall flat. There's a lot of things that like, oh, that's what they chose to do there. Like they're just doing that to be silly. It just didn't get me the way that Scare Me or Wolf of Snow Hollow got me, So like if I was going to rank it or whatever, I would say that it's like maybe like a 7.5 or so, whereas I think a lot of sites and like people on Twitter and stuff are like, this is a 10, this is incredible. I just don't feel that way.
Yeah, I think we are in the minority compared to, like you said, I've seen nothing but absolute praise for this movie, and I absolutely liked it. Let me put it that way. And I probably would go, if we're doing it out of 10, I would probably go like a 6.5 to a low 7.
Okay.
Something in there. Let's put it this way. I rented it for $6.99 on Vudu, and I totally feel like I got my money's worth. I don't regret spending money on it, and I would totally recommend everybody go out and rent this movie or buy it on VOD or whatever. I think it's a movie that's well worth checking out. Will it be in my top 10 horror movies of 2021? I don't know. Probably. If it is, it'll be at the low end.
Okay.
But that not every movie can be the best horror movie of the year. Like you said, I'm excited about Josh Rubin to a point where when his name is attached to a project, now that I've seen Scare Me and this Werewolves Within, I'm going to check out his next project regardless. And in a way, it's very similar to Jim Cummings, who directed The Wolf of Snow Hollow, because when I see his name on a project now, I get excited. Like, oh man, this is the guy who did that movie.
Right.
I can't wait. And I feel like the horror community has so many of these young, up and coming writer directors. Going back to Ari Aster and Mike Flanagan, who's he's been in the game now for a decade. But Jordan, oh God,
Bloom, Peele.
Jordan Peele,
yeah.
Jordan Peele. Like you have so many of these people who are just getting their feet wet in horror. They've made 1, 2, maybe 3 movies, and it's exciting that there's so many of them now.
Hell yeah, and I enjoy just kind of finding them with you, because I don't know if I would have watched Scare Me if I had not been, doing the show with you, and I wouldn't have watched this then either, so that's a real benefit. Speaking of Shudder, you mentioned Shudder before. I was thinking that for our channel moving forward. So you mentioned The Omen before. I haven't seen The Omen. That's one of those, oh, Pete hasn't seen that? Here's another one that, oh, Pete hasn't seen. It's kind of embarrassing. Near Dark. That just came on Shudder, didn't it?
Yes.
Right? Yes.
So I only saw Near Dark one time, and it was a VHS rental back in the day. And that movie has been notoriously hard to find. I don't think it's ever been on a streaming service where you didn't have to either buy it outright or pay a very high rental fee. So that's a big deal that
nice.
Near Dark is available. And I think there's a new Blu-ray of it coming out soon. But I can't wait to rewatch it. I haven't rewatched that in so long. And that came out the same year as Lost Boys. Talking about gateway horror movies that Charlotte, that was one of Charlotte and my first videos for the channel. Right. It was a 30-minute short, a 30-second short video with her reaction to Lost Boys.
Yeah. So, it sounds like we both liked Werewolves Within, but maybe we thought that it could have been a little bit better, especially considering the buzz around it.
Yeah. This is one of those consistent problems that I think movies in general have, but the horror community does very often, where we'll explode the expectations of a film. Like Werewolves Within, if I went into this cold, if I was just flipping through Vudu or Amazon Prime and I saw this sitting there for $7 and I said, oh, Josh Rubin, he directed Scare Me. I love that movie. Oh, let me check this out. Probably would have liked it a little bit more. But when you're on Twitter and you're on, Facebook and you see the horror community going crazy for this movie, it kind of lifted my expectations a little bit. And it's not the movie's fault, but it didn't reach those expectations for me.
Right. So, and see, there's certain Twitter people that because of them, you get super excited, or people get really excited and they kind of talk them up.
And listen, I'm really happy movies like this blow up, because this isn't a big studio. This isn't A Quiet Place 2 or The Conjuring 3. This is the type of movie that we want to see get blown up on social media, so that we shell out our $7 or $15 to rent it or buy it. So it doesn't bother me. It's just sometimes, and I'm guilty of this too. Hereditary came out 3 years ago, and I'll argue with anybody that it's the best horror movie of the last 25 years, and it came out 3 years ago. So that I've set the expectations for that movie way too high for other people.
Right.
I get it.
Well, you know what? There are some classics, though, that I think we should knock out on this channel. I think that we should cover The Omen on this channel because of Richard Donner's passing, right? Yeah. And then we'll watch Near Dark just because that just came up on Shudder. And then I think that you and Charlotte have not covered Army of Darkness yet, right?
No, we did watch The Evil Dead, the original from 1981, and Evil Dead Part 2. We're going to watch Army of Darkness, and then we're going to watch the remake of Evil Dead from 2013, or the reimagining of Evil Dead, which is, for my money, one of the best reimaginings ever made. Can't wait to do that, and then maybe her and I will do a quick franchise ranking video. It's really easy. There's only 4 of them, but also we also want to maybe watch the Ash vs. Evil Dead series.
Yes, sir. Actually, because I know you're sending me the Blu-rays, but I actually got the first season on DVD from my library, and I already watched the first 3 episodes. So,
very nice.
Yeah,
so
I'm enjoying it, man. I mean, not to dog on Werewolves Within, but I was laughing a lot more watching Ash versus the Evil Dead, you know?
Yeah, well, it has, Kelly Maxwell is one of the great characters. Dana DiLorenzo on that show. Of course, Bruce Campbell. But everybody on that show. Ray Santiago is Pablo. Those 3 are just, they're pitch perfect in every episode. Love them.
Yeah. So we can talk about that show coming up soon too, maybe within the month of July as well. Cool, man. So this is our first episode as Horror Dads, and I think we had a good time. We will talk to you guys soon when we're covering The Omen, Near Dark, and some more Evil Dead content.
All
Make sure you guys stick here, though, on Horror Dads for the summer. Horror Dads.
Right.
See y'all soon.